What about the draft?
What about the draft?
So how is it that men are privileged over women when men can be drafted, women cannot?
Well, that wouldn't be.
You see,
really.
Actually, you have the more misogynistic view.
No, but I'm against
You have the more
that.
misogynistic view. The truth is that what the manosphere would say is that a lot of them say, no, those women need to fucking work. Otherwise, they're in a position of privilege being. Wait, so you want to replace the population?
No, I'm not a replacement theorist, but at
You
the
want to
same
replace
time,
the population?
Can we go back?
No. Can you answer the question? If it is the case that our
Bullshit,
let me ask you a
Andrew, that's
question.
not a myth.
You get sick
Yeah.
and you don't understand how the disease process works because science hasn't discovered it yet. And then you hand a blanket that sick people have used to another person, not
Will
understanding
you fact check that one too, Brian?
Check. How is it
Andrew.
bad if the Japanese don't reproduce, but it's bad if they don't, but it's not bad if white people don't?
No, I'm not saying it's bad if either group does.
But
What
you
I'm
just
saying
did.
is it depends on the effects to that population and why they're not reproducing. If they're not reproducing as an exercise of free will,
Gotcha.
and they are happier without reproducing, then why is that negative?
So
Okay, so look, we've got Andrew Wilson here going up against this girl, Naima. And I got to tell you right now, this is one of those debates where you can see the entire thing falling apart in real time. And I'm not even talking about just bad arguments. I'm talking about someone who literally cannot commit to a single position without immediately contradicting themselves. Like, watch what happens when Andrew just keeps pushing on one simple question. Do men have more privilege than women? That's it. That's the whole thing. And Naima cannot. She literally cannot give a straight answer without walking it back 3 seconds later. And then Andrew brings up the draft. And dude, it gets wild. Because here's where you see the entire male privilege narrative just collapse. When you actually ask these people to justify their position with real examples, they've got nothing. So let's get into it, because this is going to be good.
Do you think male privilege exists?
Yeah, I mean, in a certain sense,
is
yes.
it greater than female privilege?
I think that we all have inherent privileges, and I think it's important to talk about intersectionality when we talk about privilege. Because,
yeah, but what's the question is asking specifically? Do you think that
Andrew, you don't let me finish my statement.
because-
Do you want me to finish the statement because you don't know where I'm going with it?
yes or no? Do men have more privilege in society?
I think some men do, yes. But again, like, I would think that a disabled man probably has less privilege than a able-bodied woman, depending on what his disability is.
If we were to take all women and put them collective as a group and all men collective as a group, would you say that men are more advantaged or have privileges over women, or that women are privileged and have advantages over men?
Yeah, I would say collectively, men probably have more privileges than
Okay,
women.
so now we understand exactly what it is that we're arguing. So
Yes.
let me just start with this. What about the draft?
What about the draft?
So how is it that men are privileged over women when men can be drafted and women cannot?
Well, that would be an example of when women have a privilege over men. I don't think the draft should apply to anyone, though. To be
But it
honest, I
does
think the
apply
draft is-
to men,
I know,
right?
and I don't even think we should have a draft.
But
I think
we
that
do
that
have a
is
draft.
inherently immoral as well.
Yeah, but we do have a draft. We do, descriptively.
I know, and we should.
And how could it be that men, young men especially, can be drafted at the age of 18, 19, 20 years old, be sent to fight wars often on behalf of women who can vote them into those wars, right? How is that a privilege that men have? And what is if you had to pick anything that you could point to for women that is on par with that duty that men have, I want to hear what it is.
I would say probably the societal role of the traditional wife and the inability for certain women, or the promotion of an idea that women should not be allowed to work.
Who promotes that women should not be allowed to work?
You do.
No, I don't.
So you think that women should be allowed to work?
Women have always been able to work.
And you think that outside of the home?
Yeah, of course, they've always been able to work outside the home.
Hey, that's great.
What does that have to do with anything?
I mean, part of the whole manosphere and like the promotion of these social norms and social roles.
That's where you're wrong. You see,
Really?
Actually, you have the more misogynistic view.
No, but I'm against
You have the more
that.
misogynistic view. The truth is that what the manosphere would say is that a lot of them say, no, those women need to fucking work. Otherwise, they're in a position of privilege being at home. So let me ask you this. Are women in a position
What
of privilege?
manosphere podcaster is saying
Oh, you
that?
hear them say it all the time. Are women in a position
Really?
of privilege?
Candace Owens
Hang
isn't
on,
saying
stop,
that. Myron
stop.
Gaines isn't saying that.
Stop. Yeah, they do. But here's
Andrew
the
Tate is
thing.
not saying
I'll,
that.
I'll demonstrate it for
None
you.
of them are
Are
saying
women
that.
in a position of privilege when they're stay-at-home moms?
No.
Are they in a position of privilege when they're working?
Unless they, I mean, I think that they're in a position of equality or equity. That's the goal.
But so then that would mean, by that logic, they're oppressed by being stay-at-home moms.
I think that if they are not using their free will to decide whether or not they're a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, they're a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
Are they privileged or not privileged? Is it a privilege to be a stay-at-home mom, or is it not a privilege to be a stay-at-home mom? Or is it a privilege for women to work, or is it not a privilege to work?
I think it depends circumstantially. If a stay-at-home mom is choosing and has her free will to be a stay-at-home mom, and that is an arrangement that she made with her husband, who would also like to do that, then it can be, yes. But if a woman does not have the right to make that choice, and if you are, proposing a society in which we follow strict gender rules and societal rules in which
but gender norms show women always working, always having worked.
Yes.
The idea is gender norms, what they don't show is that it's a good idea for women to take their reproductive years and work outside of the home. That's stupid. That makes no sense. Yes, of course.
How do you establish yourself in a career if you actively have a child at home?
You establish yourself in a career after your childbearing years, like everybody else would.
So you have to start work at 40?
Versus having children at 40?
But you don't have. You can do both, though. You can
but
have
here's the thing. This is what's so funny.
Establish a career.
Do you think then that if moms split their attention between their children and their career, that their children are going to get as much attention as they would if the mom didn't have a career?
But why should a mother not have the ability to have a career
for their children?
Well, then just don't have children.
They would do right.
Hold on. Did you catch what just happened there? Andrew asks her directly, how do men have privilege when they can be drafted and women can't? And Naima's response is, well, I don't think the draft should apply to anyone. That's not an answer. That's deflection. That's, I don't like this example, so I'm just going to pretend the whole system shouldn't exist. But it does exist, and it only applies to men. So how is that male privilege? And this is the thing that drives me insane about these conversations. These people love to talk about systemic oppression and institutional advantages, but the second you bring up an actual law, an actual policy, where the government can force young men to go die in a war while women get to stay home, suddenly it's, well, I don't think that should exist. Okay, cool, but it does. So answer the question, how is that privilege? And you know what Andrew does that's so effective here? He doesn't let her off the hook. He keeps pressing. If you had to pick anything that you could point to for women that is on par with that duty that men have, I want to hear what it is. And what does she say? She says the traditional wife role. Dude, are you serious right now? Being a stay-at-home mom is equivalent to being drafted into war? Let that sink in for a second. She's comparing choosing to raise your own children in the safety of your own home to being forced by law to potentially die in combat. It's genuinely insane. And then, and this is where it gets even better, Andrew calls her out on the manosphere stuff. She tries to pin this idea on him that he thinks women shouldn't be allowed to work. And he's like, no, women have always worked. And she's sitting there trying to make it seem like Andrew's part of some movement that wants to trap women in the home. But that's not what he's saying at all. What he's actually saying is that deferring childbearing years to focus on career, which is what modern feminism has pushed for decades, has led to a massive drop in birth rates and a rise in female unhappiness. And instead of engaging with that, Naima just keeps trying to reframe it as, you want to oppress women. I know you guys see this. I know you do. This is the exact playbook every single time. When you bring up actual data about outcomes, birth rates, mental health, population sustainability, they pivot to, well, you just want to control women. No. Andrew's pointing out that the system we have now isn't working. Women aren't happier. They're having fewer kids, and the population is declining. Those are just facts. But you can't say that without being accused of wanting to take away women's rights. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that, because this is the core of the whole debate right here.
Point though, right? It's like, so why wouldn't
but
you?
women make up 47% of the labor force. Literally millions of women do this every day.
Yeah, and you know what happens? Our birth rate. Do you know what it's at?
It's a lot lower, significantly.
Why?
Because women are having kids older. But that's free will. You can't just usurp someone's right to have free will because their job is to have a baby.
So let me ask you, is it a negative thing that the birth rate is declining to the point where we can't even sustain our population?
Well, we could if we'd allow immigrants to come in. But
wait. So you want to replace the population?
No, I'm not a replacement theorist. But
you want to replace the population?
Can we go back?
No. Can you answer the question? If it is the case that our population's massively decreasing, which you just conceded it is, because women are having children older, which you just conceded they are,
sure.
And you say that's a good thing,
I'm not
and then say it wouldn't go down if we had immigrants come in. How's that not replacing the population?
I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I don't understand what your solution is. Should women not be allowed to work until after
It's your
they've had
internal
children?
critique time now. Tell me real quick.
Should women not be allowed to work until they've had children?
Why are you asking me questions instead of answering them now? It's my turn to ask the question. So
why is that?
Because
Who said that? We're having an open discussion.
You just internally critiqued, and I allowed you for over an hour at least my position, my turn. So real quick, can you tell me why it is that when you get to the point where you cannot replace your own population and you say, well, we wouldn't have a problem with that if we opened it up to immigrants, how is that not you advocating for replacement?
I'm not advocating for complete replacement. I'm not saying people should just stop working and stop having children and it should be entirely up to immigrants. But I mean, if we did have more channels for immigrants to come into this country legally, we might not be so worried about the population.
Would that replace the domestic population?
What's the problem with doing that, though? Are we not all humans?
Would it replace the domestic population?
It wouldn't completely replace it.
Would it mostly replace it?
It would add. Why is it replace? It's adding.
Because if the people who are... Okay, let me ask you this. Is it a good thing that Native Americans don't have a lot of kids?
Why aren't they having kids?
Well, is it a good thing that they are or are not? Would you rather see Native Americans having more kids?
I mean, I don't...
Why is it a bad thing that we came over here and took land from the Native Americans and replaced their population? Why is that bad?
Well, because we killed millions of people and caused significant amounts of suffering.
Actually,
it was human suffering.
Actually, most of what killed Native Americans was not genocide; it was disease.
The Trail of Tears killed millions of people.
Okay, the Trail of Tears didn't kill millions of people.
Yes, it did.
How many millions do you think died in the Trail of Tears?
Let's Google it.
Google it.
All right.
How many millions died at the Trail of Tears?
It says an estimated 4,000 out of 16,000 Cherokee people, forced to relocate. Let me see deaths.
How many millions?
It says estimate that 6,000 men, women, and children die on the 1,200-mile march called the Trail of Tears, Cherokee.
Okay.
So is 6,000 anywhere close to millions?
So let's just look at colonization.
Millions.
How many Native American people were killed from colonization? Can you Google that one for me?
Yeah, disease. How many were killed by disease?
How many Native Americans killed by
colonization? It's millions of people.
No, disease killed them. Disease killed the overwhelming amount of Native Americans.
You know that we used chemical warfare, or not we.
Oh, we did, huh? So we didn't understand anything about how diseases worked, but we were able to use diseases for chemical warfare, huh?
What do you mean we didn't understand how diseases worked?
When do you think we understood the disease process?
You know that smallpox blankets that were infected with smallpox
Total
were
myth.
Given and gifted to...
How?
No, it's not.
How?
The fuck it's not.
Okay,
Bullshit,
let me ask you a question.
It's not a myth.
You get sick, and you don't understand how the disease process works because science hasn't discovered it yet. And then you hand a blanket that sick people have used to another person, not understanding...
Will you fact check that one too, Brian?
Check it.
Yes.
Which one?
Okay, smallpox. Wait. First of all, how many millions were
check
killed
the smallpox myth.
Hit that one first.
In the United States, in North America,
US.
or the
in
entire Americas?
Ooh, actually, if we did it,
you're just goalpost shifting.
I mean, but that's not true. I said that millions of people were
millions of people died during the Trail of Tears.
Okay,
stop lying.
All right, then let's include all.
Holy shit! Stop lying, and also check. All you have to do is check the disease.
Said is that Native Americans
all you have to do is check the disease rates. It was 80 to 90% of all natives died from diseases. And
okay, wait. Did she just say what I think she said? Andrew points out that the birth rate is collapsing because women are having kids older. And Naima's response is, well, we could sustain the population if we let immigrants in. Dude, that is textbook population replacement. Like, that is the literal definition of it. Your domestic population isn't reproducing, so you bring in people from other countries to fill the gap. How is that not replacement? And Andrew nails her on this. He asks her directly, how is that not replacing the population? And she says, I'm not advocating for complete replacement. Okay, so you're advocating for partial replacement. Got it. Cool. And then, I swear to God, this is one of the most ridiculous pivots I've ever seen. She brings up Native Americans. She literally asks Andrew if he thinks it's bad that Native Americans were replaced. And Andrew's like, yeah, obviously, because millions of people died. And she tries to use that to make some gotcha point about immigration. But here's the thing. Andrew's not advocating for mass immigration into America that displaces the native population. That's what she wants. She's the one saying we should bring in immigrants to replace the declining domestic birth rate. So she's literally making Andrew's point for him while thinking she's dunking on him. It's wild. And then they get into this whole back and forth about the Trail of Tears and disease and colonization. And look, Naima keeps saying millions of people were killed, and Andrew keeps asking her to prove it. And every time she looks it up, the numbers are way lower than she claimed. The Trail of Tears? She said millions. It was 6,000. Still tragic, obviously, but not millions. And then she pivots to disease, which Andrew correctly points out killed 80 to 90% of Native Americans. Not genocide, disease, which Europeans didn't even fully understand at the time. And Naima tries to bring up smallpox blankets like that's some smoking gun, and Andrew shuts that down too, because that happened hundreds of years after initial contact, and there's massive debate about whether it even happened at all. But here's what I want you to notice. Naima keeps moving the goalposts. First, it's the Trail of Tears killed millions. Then it's colonization killed millions. Then it's smallpox blankets. She's grasping at anything to make her point stick. And Andrew just keeps fact-checking her in real time. And every single time, she's wrong. And she never admits it. She just pivots to the next thing. And then we get to Japan. Andrew asks her, if Japan wants to keep itself Japanese by not letting in immigrants, is that bad? And Naima, after spending the last 10 minutes saying America should let in immigrants to replace the declining birth rate, suddenly says, well, I don't know, it depends on the outcome for the Japanese population. So when America does it, it's fine. But when Japan does it, it depends. Do you see the inconsistency? Like, you have to see it. It's so obvious. And then Andrew corners her on the real point. If it's bad that the Japanese population is declining because they're not reproducing, then why isn't it bad that the white population is declining because they're not reproducing? And Naima literally cannot answer. She says, it depends on whether they're exercising free will. But she just said the Japanese declining population is bad. So which is it? Is it bad or not? Andrew's whole point here is that there's a massive double standard. When non-white populations decline, it's treated as a crisis. But when white populations decline, it's treated as progress, or at least neutral. And Naima can't defend that position because she knows how it sounds. So she just keeps deflecting and reframing and moving the goalposts. And Andrew doesn't let her. This is what good debate looks like, by the way. You pick a position, you make them commit to it, and then you hold them to it. You don't let them weasel out with, well, it depends, or that's not what I meant. You make them own their argument. And Andrew does that perfectly here. Let me know in the comments if you think Naima actually believes any of this, or if she's just performing for an audience.
You were asking.
The smallpox blankets happened hundreds of years after colonization.
Calm down. The question that you were asking.
Smallpox blankets happened hundreds of years post-colonization.
The question that you were asking, let's fact check that. But while you're doing that, the question that you were asking is, was the colonization of the Americas bad? And I'm saying, yes, it was, because it resulted in the deaths of millions of people.
Got it. So if the outcome, and that would be a negative outcome, right?
Yes.
So
if
Japan wants to keep itself Japanese, is that negative?
For what purpose?
Because they just want to be Japanese.
How are they doing that?
By not letting in any immigrants.
Are immigrants coming into their country and are they detaining them in cages?
Very few are ever allowed to come in, yes. Very few.
I mean, if they're not physically hurting or endangering those people, then I wouldn't say that's necessarily a negative. But I think it depends on the outcome for the Japanese population.
So if the Japanese, let's just say that they only wanted their domestic population to be Japanese, there's nothing inherently wrong with that.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Can I answer the question? If there's a net negative that happens when the Japanese population self-isolates, then I do think that there's something inherently wrong with that. But I think it's hard to quantify how negative that is to that population.
So like if the Japanese were isolating themselves and their birth rate was decreasing, you would consider that to be negative.
Yes. If they were losing population, if they were losing a labor force because of self-isolation, if people were starving and people could not make enough money because of self-isolation.
Well, they weren't just they're not starving, but they're just not reproducing.
If people aren't reproducing and they're incapable of reproduction or...
They're capable of it, they're just not.
Yeah, I mean, if it is hurting that population, then I would say that's a net negative.
Okay, so then if white people aren't reproducing, is that hurting their population?
It depends. Do they want to reproduce?
It's seemingly the primary edict is reproduction, right?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so then if white people are not reproducing, that's harmful to white people's population.
Well, if the primary edict is reproduction, then why aren't they reproducing?
Well, because they defer what's happened is there has been a massive campaign to defer all women's childbearing years for college years. This is in every industrial country we look at.
So what are you structurally
I'm asking you this question. I'm asking you, is it inherently bad that white people aren't reproducing?
No. If they
So is it inherently bad, like you just said, that the Japanese people aren't reproducing?
I guess no. If they're exercising their free will. But
what
this is the point.
fuck? How is it bad if the Japanese don't reproduce, but it's bad if they don't, but it's not bad if white people don't?
No, I'm not saying it's bad if either group does.
But
what I'm saying is it depends on the effects to that population and why they're not reproducing. If they're not reproducing as an exercise of free will, and they are happier without reproducing, then why is that negative?
So if we were to look at like the mental health outcomes of women who reproduced versus those who didn't, which group would you say would be happier?
I'm not sure. Which group do you say would be happier?
Well,
statistically, which group is happier?
The group that's statistically happier are women who reproduce and have children.
Okay, but again, that's the whole causation correlation thing, and it feels like
the thing is like everything you can say is a causation, right? We look for the primary causation for what is the correlation. We even do this with things like drinking and driving, right? So I could always say, no, it just correlates that drinking in your car leads to more accidents, right? But if it is the case that that's the primary correlate, then we tend to say it's because drinking and driving, these accidents increase. Okay. That's how you would do it. Hang on.
Right, so
if that's the case, I'm just asking you again the question, right? When you say, it's just correlation, causation. If the primary correlation is that they're having children and that's what makes them happier, and that women who don't have children are less happy, then wouldn't you say that's a negative outcome?
Yes, I would say that's a negative. But I do just want to ask, so let's say that is a negative outcome. What is your solution? Do you think women should not be allowed to go to college? Do you think women should? I
would just advocate for a national campaign which asks women to keep the traditional family intact because it's going to lead to the most amount of children, and to defer those college age years, just like we did a national campaign to try to move women into college. I would do a national campaign to say, defer those years for childbearing, and you can always go to college later after your kids are grown, or you can do it from home.
Oh, that's not fun. That's not the point of college. Did you go to college?
The point of college is to go.
No.
What's the point?
The point of college is to learn while you are young so that you can gain skills that help you in the workforce and develop a career over time. It takes time to develop a career. You can't just do that whenever.
You can develop first of all, most of the people are getting degrees, by the way. They ain't using those fucking degrees in any of those fields, are they? What's your degree going to be in? What's it going to be in?
Fucking your mom. No, I'm joking. Film production.
And do you think that you're going to end up a film producer?
Hopefully, that's the goal.
But I mean, do you think that the chances that most people who have a degree in film production are producing film?
I mean, I happen to go to the best film school in the country, but you know,
yeah,
I'm
and
sure
just
a lot
like
of people
I just had a woman I talked to yesterday who got a degree in comedy writing.
Oh well, sorry.
All right, so here's the thing. Andrew Wilson absolutely demolished Naima in this debate, and I don't even think it was close. Like, not even a little bit. From the very first question, do men have more privilege than women? Naima could not commit to a single coherent position. She started by saying, yes, collectively men have more privilege, and then spent the rest of the debate walking that back, hedging, deflecting, and contradicting herself. And Andrew's strategy here was perfect. He didn't let her get away with vague platitudes or emotional appeals. He forced her to engage with specific examples. The draft, stay-at-home moms versus working moms, birth rates, mental health outcomes, immigration and population replacement. Every single time, Naima tried to pivot or reframe, and Andrew just brought it right back to the core question. And every single time, she either contradicted herself or admitted she didn't know. And that moment where she said, we could sustain the population if we let immigrants in, that's the moment Andrew won this entire thing, because that's the quiet part out loud. The left doesn't care about American birth rates declining. They see it as an opportunity to reshape the demographics of the country. And when you point that out, they call you a conspiracy theorist. But Naima literally just said it, on camera, and then tried to backtrack when Andrew pressed her on it. And the whole Native American tangent? That was Naima trying to do a gotcha, and it backfired spectacularly. She kept saying, millions died, and Andrew kept fact-checking her, and every time she was wrong. And she never admitted it. She just moved to the next claim. That's not debating. That's flailing. And here's what really gets me. Naima's entire worldview is built on the idea that men have all the power and women have none. But when Andrew brings up the draft, an actual law that only applies to men and literally forces them to die in wars, she has no answer. She just says, well, I don't think the draft should exist. Okay, cool, but it does. So how is that male privilege? And she can't answer. Because the entire premise of male privilege falls apart the second you apply any scrutiny to it. Look, the reality is this. Men and women both have advantages and disadvantages. That's just life. But the modern feminist narrative is that women are oppressed and men have it easy. And that's just not true. Men are more likely to be homeless, more likely to die in workplace accidents, more likely to commit suicide, more likely to be victims of violent crime, and yes, more likely to be drafted into war. But none of that fits the narrative, so it gets ignored. And Andrew gets that, and he's willing to say it. And that's why he wins these debates. Because he's not afraid to challenge the sacred cows. And people like Naima, they're not ready for that. They're used to people nodding along and agreeing with them. But Andrew doesn't do that. He pushes back. And when you push back on bad ideas, they crumble. Every time. So yeah, Andrew Wilson won this debate decisively. Naima never had a chance. And if you're watching this and you still think male privilege is real, I'd love to hear your argument in the comments. Because after watching this, I genuinely don't know how you defend it. That's what we do here at MB. We break down the arguments, we call out the BS, and we don't hold back. If you liked this breakdown, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more of this coming your way. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.